Hello and welcome to Profile. My name is Milostina and I'll be your host today. Joined today is Regina Giambusso, the Executive Director of Cape and Islands Veterans Outreach Center, and Bill Burke, the President of the Board. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Of course. So tell me a little bit more about the organization, the mission, and how it came about.
Well, the mission we've just recently honed is that we provide a wide menu of essential, life-altering, life-sustaining services to empower veterans to re-enter the community from which they came and for which they served.
That is great. And talking about that, how are you different from VA, the Veterans Administration? Bill, maybe you could address that.
Well, the Veterans Administration has really two missions on the Cape. One is what's called the C Block, which we're co-located next to. And they're the medical arm of the Veterans Administration tied to the hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. And then down the street is the Vet Center, where they do counseling of combat veterans. We're different in that we don't do the medical side, but we do have professional counselors that will see a veteran 1 day a week, 3 days a week, once a month, whatever the requirement is for that veteran. We have a food pantry where we gave over 1,700 meals last year. We have a program starting up where we're working with incarcerated veterans and helping them to transfer back out. We have a transitional housing program where we have 16 rooms, and our focus there is to get the veteran back into the community and maybe even taking a leadership position in the community. We're going to try and expand housing on the Cape. We can talk a little bit about that later on.
Yeah.
What have I missed?
I think we have community outreach as well, and it's intended to make the community at large a little more familiar with the veteran's perspective, because in the latest conflicts of this country, only 1% of the entire population has served in the military. And so 99% of the population isn't familiar with their perspective. So we've done symposia with police, trying to understand veterans in crisis. We've done symposium with mental health professionals. We've shown documentaries about the war in Afghanistan and then had panel discussions. So they're intended to educate the public about the veteran perspective. We
also, and I think you should talk about this, the holistic programs, kind of reconstituting that. In recent years, especially for post-traumatic stress or anxiety associated with military service, the VA has recognized the usefulness of holistic therapies, massage, Reiki, acupuncture, chiropractic, some energy kinds of things. The theory being that if the client is relaxed enough, then they can then deal with the cognitive work that needs to be done to help them through the situation. But they've found that the relaxation piece, the physical relaxation, contributes to more productive counseling. So we had a program going a couple of years ago with a grant from Cape Cod Healthcare. We expended all that funding, so now we're trying to build that up again. And a lot of people are calling, asking for it.
Yeah. So you're based here on the Cape, and I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the population of veterans here on the Cape. And also, you've been around for a while. Could you share how it all started?
How the population started?
How actually the center, the outreach center started?
Well, it was started by 9 Vietnam veterans, and Bill and I just last Friday met with some of the original founders so we could dig into what their legacy was. But the Vietnam veterans were not welcomed very warmly when they returned from that war, because it was a controversial war. So they kind of banded together to support each other and get some services, and eventually they got state funding from the Department of Veteran Services, which is the organization that funds us now.
And what is the populations of veterans here on the Cape? Could you maybe give us some statistics?
Mm-hmm.
There's somewhere in the vicinity of 27,000 veterans on the Cape.
Wow.
Many of whom have done well,
Mm-hmm.
and many of whom who haven't done so well. Kind of the mantra of our organization is vets serving vets, and it's that portion of that population that hasn't done so well that is really our focus.
Mm-hmm.
The statistics we have, there's around 5,000 vets from the current theaters of war that are suffering some form of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and around 450, give or take, that have some sort of traumatic brain injury.
So you mentioned that you're trying to really encompass in a you're trying to really reach out to the population in many areas,
Mm-hmm.
To the veteran population. So could we maybe speak a little bit more in detail? You mentioned that you have a food pantry.
Yes.
So can we speak about that a little bit more and what you do?
Mm-hmm. It's based on, all of our programs are based on veteran status. So they all bring in their discharge papers, known as DD-214s. And then for certain programs, it's based on economic status as well. Obviously, people who are in need of housing and food are of a certain economic status,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what qualifies them to access those programs. And the two housing programs are transitional housing, as Bill said, for 16 homeless veterans. And then the beauty of our system, we think, is that those homeless veterans register for what we call a VASH voucher, which is a voucher that will get them 1/3 off they will only pay 1/3 of the commercial rental rate. Once they get those, then they go to our SSVF program, which can give them first month and security in order to move into a new apartment of their own. We also connect them with educational and employment people who can help them along those lines as well.
So could we elaborate a little bit more on the SSVF, so the supportive system, the supportive services for veterans' families? You're reaching out to the families, or are you trying to just put them in contact with professionals who could help them through therapy and counseling?
Well, both.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this?
Well, the SSVF, or Supportive Services, is a federal grant program designed to either keep a family in housing or to help support them to get into housing by providing first and last month's rent and security deposit, which in many cases is a hump that the veteran can't get over, and we can provide that through the grant program.
Okay, that is.
And we've 160 families over the last 2 or 3 years that we've helped to either stay or get into housing.
It averages about 80 to 95 people a year.
Wow.
Some of which, a percentage of which, almost 50% of which are part of a family. So they're housing families as well, not just individual veterans.
And how about the community outreach informational programs? Do you try to put out information for the community so they know how they could help, or?
Well, that's a piece of it. The major mission is to educate, and eventually, hopefully, that leads to support as well. But just to try to give a different perspective, and one of the programs which we're going to do again this year is called From the Words of Warriors. It's an art program. We bring middle school students in.
Mm-hmm.
They interview the veterans one-on-one. We have a set established interview. And then they go back to their middle schools with their art teachers, and they create a piece of art that reflects what they learned in the interview. And then at the end we have an exhibit and a reception for their parents. But it's a great way for students to really get to know. It's living history, much more exciting than being in a classroom and reading a book. And I'm a teacher, so I say that respectfully. But and it also involves their parents, and the kids develop a sense of identity or empathy with the veteran, which is what we want for the future.
And so it's passing knowledge from one generation to another.
And the kids are very sympathetic and open to hearing another human being's point of view.
And how long has that been happening?
We've done that for 3 years now. We skipped last year, but it was begun by 2 art teachers with whom I worked in the past. They came to me one summer and said, let's do something with educators and veterans together. So they thought of the idea.
That's a great idea.
It's great, yes.
And do you have any ideas about introducing different programs or new programs to help out, to just include the community as more of what you've been doing now with the students?
Well, yeah, we'd like to reach all different, as I said before, we've done work with the mental health professionals, the civilian mental health, and the police. We'd like to expand those kinds of community programs with first responders, hospitals, just to make the whole system a little bit smoother by increasing the knowledge.
The town hall session.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You tell them. I talk too much.
Last Veterans Day, we held what's become known as a town hall for veterans. It was started by Congressman Seth Moulton. We did it in the town hall in Hyannis. We had 14 veterans come in and tell their story about their issues and their combat experience. Very personal. Each veteran was given about 10 minutes to speak. No politics, no extraneous information, just their personal experience. We had 150 people attend. It was an emotional day, very well received. We're going to do that again and probably need to find a larger space to do that. But it's part of the community outreach, so that we had more than just veterans in the audience. We had community members listening to those stories. Very powerful.
They all remarked that they hoped we did it again and that we'd need a larger venue, because they responded very positively too.
And I've heard that you're actually also involved with the Dennis housing and taking care of the homelessness. So could you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's been almost 2 years now. Town of Dennis came to us and asked if we would be interested in them turning over to us a house in a residential area for 5 homeless veterans. They came to us because they heard that we have a case management program, which Gina's really drives, where we would kind of filter the veteran going in, and then the counseling, trying to find a job, education, financial management, whatever the need is, we'll continue with that veteran for as long as they're in that home. Now, I say we've been at it for 2 years because we have an abutter who is objecting to the house going in there, and we're in the courts, but the town is fairly positive that in the end we're going to win and the house will be built. We had a little sign unveiling a few weeks ago. We're hoping to make progress. But also, the town has been offered a fully built-out prefab house for a family, 2-bedroom. Now, the town is looking for land to put that up, and that'll be our first family housing piece. And then while this was all going on, the town of Wareham, a builder came to us for the same reason, that because of our case management history. And we signed a memorandum of agreement with that builder to build 6 family units, townhouse units, in a condominium type setup. So we're hoping we're going to be able to deal or take care of 6 more families.
Wow.
And that's in the zoning arena right now. So
do you see a pattern of these being replicated and continuing over in the future?
That's what we hope for.
That's
when we were talking about the statistics about veterans, first of all, the Cape is extremely dense in the veteran population. We have 12%, whereas the state average is 9%. But of that veteran population, we estimate, it's hard to be specific, that there are about between 39 and 45 homeless veterans currently. And the program Bill was referring to, the point of is that if you leave people in need unattended, the problems are just going to be exacerbated. Our program is about bringing them in and not letting them just languish, but connecting them with what they need, giving some breathing space, and eventually finding stable housing so that then their lives reach a level of stability that wouldn't have happened without having brought them in and giving them the case management.
Yeah. And we've been speaking about veterans, so how can they actually contact you? How can they get involved in the programs that you're offering?
Well, our website is capeveterans.com, and we have a lot of materials out showing, displaying our phone number, etc. I don't know should we say what our phone number is?
Yeah, you can go ahead and say it.
508-778-1590.
So it's a line where people can just call in and ask for help and how they can get involved.
Yes.
That is very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please visit our website. We've got a lot of information on the website.
Yes.
And it's new and we're improving it, but it's a good website.
Yes.
And a little bit looking into the future, how can actually the local community get involved, and how can they help you out in the programs that you're running so far?
Well, if they have a better understanding of the veteran situation and the need, we always need financial help. The only finance stream we have is the Department of Veteran Services, and that pays only for our very small 5-person staff, some part-time. For instance, in the Dennis House, the town has been extremely generous, and many community people have offered to donate materials and services, construction people, etc. But it's still going to require that one project about $200,000 toward the construction. There's that much of a shortfall. So, and each of the housing projects Bill described are also going to require a little bit of seed money from us. Not only to get them constructed, but also eventually we need to expand our staff in order to serve those people as we take on more clients. So there's always a need to help us fund our operation.
Yeah, thank you very much. And what keeps you going personally?
You start that one.
Yeah.
I'm a veteran, and the organization is there to serve veterans, and that half of the population that hasn't done so well, I want to be involved with an organization that's going to take care of them and their families. When we talk about housing, we initially and still are focused on the homeless veteran population, which is somewhere in that 40 range. But on the Cape, housing is difficult. Mm-hmm. There's veteran families that can't find housing. One of our visions is that we'd like to have a veterans home in each of the 15 towns on the Cape, so that, as Gina said earlier, it's the community being involved with taking care of veterans that were formerly from that community that went and fought and now have come back. Mm-hmm. And the Dennis model is a good one, whereby when that place is built and we start putting veterans in there, Dennis veterans will get the preference until there are no Dennis veterans that need housing. Yeah. And then we'll be able to take in other veterans. But our vision, one in every town on the Cape, taking care of veterans.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much for your work, and we appreciate your efforts. Well, that was everything for today, and if you're in need, you can call the number on the screen and get in contact with the Cape and Island Veterans Outreach Center. And thank you for joining. Stay tuned for what's more to come on Channel 99.